I recently went viral on TikTok because I shared a video about how I was able to make roughly $1,200 for working 4 hours as a licensed clinical social worker in my private practice. And one of the ways that has substantially increased my income was by doing immigration evaluations and assessments. So I got tons of questions from fellow therapists wondering how they too can get into this work. And so today, this video is going to give you a overview of how to get into this work and kind of some key differences from being a therapist versus an evaluator, right? And you may sometimes hear me say or refer to evaluator as a forensics evaluator, immigration evaluator. I use the terms interchangeably, so hopefully let's just get that out of the way so we stick with me. So the first things first, right? In terms of how I got into it, actually, before we go there, if you are new here, my name is Aneem Ali. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with over 16 years of experience. I own and run and operate a private practice. My private practice is unique in that it doesn't just solely focus on mental health services. We actually also provide wraparound services. We contract with agencies and nonprofits in the community to better support them. We also provide education and learning and development resources for those agencies in the community that are really looking to increase their knowledge around mental health, create more robust mental health services for themselves and their teams. And so we really love to partner with our community because I am an African woman and I believe like together we go further, right? Together we create more impact. So that's me. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So in terms of how I got into it, I've shared this tons of times before, but I took a training about 5 years ago. I don't know how I came across it. I don't remember, but I saw it and I'm just like, oh wow, this looks really interesting, right? And so the training was through the University of Texas at Austin, and it was in tandem with like the School of Social Work. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm almost confident that's what was the case. And I took the training. And so in this training, it really taught therapists how to evaluate trauma victims, particularly immigrants who are victims of trauma, and they were attempting to file for some sort of status, right, or seeking some sort of status as it relates to their, residency or their pending immigration status. And so it really enhanced your skills and kind of understanding the difference between a mental health therapist and evaluator. Although it goes hand in hand, they are different roles. And I did take some notes, so I want to share that with you all. So when we think about mental health therapists or a client coming in, we're supportive, we're accepting, we're empathetic, we're building long-term relationships with these people. Therefore, we're creating space and room for them, right? We virtually have unlimited amount of time, but not really when you think about it, especially in the sense of you using insurance, right? That we'd like to think it's unlimited amount of time. So we're really taking our time. We're not really necessarily focused on anything in particular, especially in the beginning of the work that we're doing, especially depending on the type of, clinical lens you're using per se. And then in terms of like source of information, which is really important when you're doing immigration and evaluation and assessments, we are looking to the client as a primary self-reporter. Now, if you're working with children, you may hear from the parents as well, right? Sometimes we like to hear what's going on from the parents and kind of use that in the treatment model, especially doing possibly some family work, because I've always been taught, and I truly believe, like, you can't really impact a child until you impact that system. So we're looking for them to kind of report back to us what is going on. So the goal of like therapy in most instances is to benefit the client, help them increase whatever goals or work towards the goals that they have established for themselves. We're identifying goals, and we really focus on the subjective experience of the client, right? Whatever that client feels they have experienced, we're accepting, we're normalizing them, we're creating space for that, and we're understanding. We're, especially in the beginning stages, we're trying to understand so we can formulate a diagnosis, treatment plan, and work on towards the goals that they're going to. So that's like to standard mental health therapy, one-to-one, working with them. But when we're putting on the evaluator hat, right? You're now like a forensics evaluator. Sounds fancy, but like virtually that's what you are. It's a little different, right? So in the sense of like our attitudes kind of shift, in that we're no longer looking to seek to build a long-term relationship with this person. And one of the things you have to keep in mind, you shouldn't be working with the client long-term if you've evaluated them. Because we have to create a neutral stance. We have to create an unbiased stance. We're collecting data. And so we're really looking to be neutral and objective and detached. We're not looking to build that, relationship like we are in a one-to-one setting. I will say that it is also important, regardless of whether you're an evaluator or a therapist or working in therapy sense, that we are trauma informed. And if anyone has questions about trauma informed, I can talk about that forever. Let me know in the comments. So we're neutral, we're objective, we're detached. We're focused on getting objective data to really understand what is going on and provide a potential diagnosis to speak to what this client has experienced. Then when we think about the source of information, we potentially can use multiple sources of information. So whether that's coming from the client, perhaps the attorney, if they have an attorney. Not all clients, have to have an attorney when they are petitioning for VAVA or whatever status that they're petitioning for. They don't have to have it. But if they do, sometimes there's valuable information. There may be court records, there may be medical records. That type of information may be helpful to solicit from the client before meeting with them, because that can help you objectively understand what is going on. So multiple sources of data is really important. The second thing is, thirdly, nature of the relationship, right? So in the therapy space, I talk a lot about we're helping, we're, supportive, we're like really fostering this really rich relationship where the client feels, incredibly comfortable, and we're diving really deep into some really deep stuff. Whereas in the evaluative, or you're wearing the evaluator hat, you're more investigating, right? You're trying to understand what's been going on. You're sort of trying to get to a place where you understand, like, or get some clarity on, the symptoms, or like the extent to which the abuse was taking place, and the traumatic experience that they've undergone, unfortunately, which you'll hear a lot of. And then when we think about our goals, the goal really is to maintain some level, be objective with the data. This is so important in writing the report and writing a strong report, is objective data, right? We're not looking to necessarily, again, build this long-term relationship with this client, but we're being as objective as possible to get that data that we need to support whatever clinical diagnosis that you are going to come up with or formulate. And then, again, we're looking for valid objective data. So one of the things that I always use is like measurement screening tools. I use my PCL5, I use my PHQ-9, and I may use some other ones depending on what's going on, but that's pretty standard for me. So that's sort of the background, if you will, on kind of understanding how this differs from being, your standard therapist and your evaluator. Regardless of where you stand, because you are a licensed clinical professional, you are already qualified to do this work. And I say this as somebody who's questioned myself, asked the question repeatedly, and also have undergone 2 trainings now. And I remember vividly, like, this one attorney that was saying, like, if you are a licensed professional and you have experience with assessing, diagnosing, and evaluating, you are qualified to do this work. So we can get that out of the way. The next thing, in terms of what happens once you do the training, the biggest part of this is marketing. If nobody knows that you're there, nobody knows you do this, how will you get clients? And there's no right or wrong way to go about marketing. It's about what makes sense, right? How do you want people to be able to access you? So whether you're showing up on YouTube, whether you are sending out postcards, mailers, whatever that is for you, or maybe you know an attorney that does this work and you reach out to them and you guys foster, a working relationship, whatever that looks like for you, you need to identify a strong marketing plan. Because oftentimes what I see is that a lot of folks, they take the training and then they're just like, hey, I'm not getting any clients. I don't know what's going on. The clients are not just going to come to you just because you completed the training. You need to be actively marketing and making sure those clients know who you are. And you know, in terms of marketing, I always say, like, speak to people's problems and they will find you. So that's my take on that. And then that's pretty much it. There's no special recipe, if you will. You do get better with time and experience, and I've been fortunate to have worked with some amazing attorneys to kind of really get to a place where the way I'm writing this and having a process in place, it makes sense. And I've grown more familiar and more comfortable with it over time. And I'm super grateful for this experience and this opportunity. And that's why I wanted to create this video. So if you have any questions that I did not answer, definitely let me know below and I'll be happy to answer them for you. All right. Y'all take care.